What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Philip back with Thrifty PS Gamer Reviews. Today, friends, we are going over the game Victor Vran. No fluff, no additives. Let's dive into it. Here's the summary of the game. Victor Vran was released in 2015 by Heimamount Games. Sorry if I butchered your name. This is an independent studio in Bulgaria. The game is in the same vein as Diablo, Torchlight, Wolves of Midgard. It is a top-down isometric view game. It is a loot-based game where you will be constantly going through your stash and making the needed upgrades and adjustments. You are a hunter who has gone to Zagavargio to look for a friend of yours. The city has been overrun by demonic beasts, and the elements have been twisted to match. As you continue, you will unravel more about why the demons came in the first place and realize that you and you alone can stop them. Does this sound like a loot-based action RPG yet? These things are not exclusive to Victor Vran. It seems like most games in this genre has a problem and only you can solve it. Which, to be fair, that's most games in general. So, where is this game and how much is it? The game is available for purchase from PSN right now with their sale in Standard and Overkill Edition for $5.99 and $7.99 respectively. The game is normally $19.99 on PSN. It is also available right now to those who have PS Extra. While we're here and talking, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. Really helps the channel. I'm hoping to grow again this year by another 75 subscribers. So let's see if we can make that happen. Okay, let's get into the game. Gameplay. As I mentioned earlier, the game is very Diablo-ish. The biggest and most important addition is a jump button that is actually used to solve environmental puzzles and reach secret spots on different various maps. I'm not even kidding when I say I started the game up and in the first little corridor, I was hitting all the buttons to figure out what stuff would do. And I hit the jump button and my guy jumped. And it was I was so happy. I was like, man, I've wanted a jump button in all of these games for so long. And the fact that they utilize it in such a way to make the game a more vertical in scope really, really helped with my enjoyment of this title. There are chests, unique bosses, mini bosses. There's a good variety of enemy types and map locations. You have dungeons and caves to explore and find. One of the cool things about the different places is that you can explore so many different times because each place has different objectives that you earn stars when completing them. This can give you a sense of achievement and makes the spot very replayable, as I just mentioned. Overall, I think the game is helped out a lot by the star system and the jump feature. I know it sounds small, but trust me, it makes a world of difference when you're walking through and it says you have 4 of 5 chests and so you go back through the whole level jumping at different walls and jumping off of them. And you do this while you're trying to find where's that last little secret. And so it's really a good use of that. And the gameplay mechanic for jumping has added so much depth to this game. Let's get into voice work. I do voice work on games that have it. I was playing this game and listening to the dialogue of Victor, and the voice kept sounding so familiar. I actually posted this to my Twitter, but the voice sounded like one that I've heard repeatedly. Come to find out, when researching for this video, I have spent well over 100 hours with this voice. The voice actor who does this voice for Victor is the same voice actor that does Geralt in The Witcher 3. The voice work is good, to say the least. With the voice work, let's get into the story, because the only time you really hear the voices is when they're progressing the story. The story is kind of light in Victor Vran. You are a hunter who went to a city looking for a fellow hunter. After you cannot find him, you meet with the queen, and then, through a series of events, you stay to vanquish the evil within the city while finding the root cause and all the twists and turns along the way. The story isn't super deep, but it is good enough to keep my interest. I love the way that it is told through a watercolor painting style with voices over it, or it is told through the character model being on screen with the voice over it. I can get along with this, especially in a game that was developed by an indie studio, but not just an indie studio. It's an indie studio that is most known for RTS games like Tropico. You will meet another hunter, an item seller, a card seller, and you get a stash in the form of a military NPC named Private Stash. This NPC name is by far my favorite, and it is the most perfect implementation of a stash. Like, it's never really made sense in games, but because they're games, we kind of give it a pass. Like, how can you keep all this stuff in your stash without people trying to steal it, especially when your stash is wide out in the open? In Victor Vran, it gives you somebody as a point man. You go to him, and you can swap things in and out of your stash, things you didn't want to get rid of, and the like. And you pick them all up at different points in the beginning of the story. So they all have kind of a story element to them. One of the things I wish the story had focused on, and that the developers would focus on just a little bit more, was side quest, because there's not a lot of them to speak of. You're either going around slaying things, finding dungeons, or you're doing things related to the main quest and main storyline. Which isn't all bad. And speaking of not all bad, let's get into combat. This is where the game is really, really good. With the added jump button, the separate dodge button, with those two, you have a couple of different ways to get out of the way of all of the projectiles that will be headed in your direction. In addition to those two things, you get two weapon options from a variety of weapons and mods. You get two special attacks, along with a maximum of 5 passive boost cards and 1 area of effect potions, along with your normal healing potion. There are so many things that have gone into this combat. There are so many different ways that you can play. I actually have a setup right now that is, I have a hammer for heavy attacks, and that hammer gains health every time I hit something. I did that because when you are fighting things that explode after they're dead, or when you're fighting things that leave poison on the floor, or can poison you in big, huge areas, you need as much healing back as possible. So I have that set up. But then I also have a sword that I use for my quick attacks. Each one of these has 3 separate attacks. So each weapon has 3 separate attacks. You have a normal attack and then 2 specials. I have literally been in fights with hordes and bosses alike and have had to use every single thing at my disposal just to barely scrape through it. I have 15 hours into the game already, and I am level 18, and I absolutely love the combat of it. It's a perfect blend between super easy and really hard. And I know that sounds like a rudimentary definition, but literally in Diablo, it's not hard, but there's a lot that you can do. In games like Torchlight, if I remember, you had like 2 or 3 separate things that you could do, and then a couple specials and stuff like that, more based along the lines of this game. And so I really love the combat. There's a ton of stuff with it without being too much used while you're in combat, if that makes sense. So like, what I mean is the passive cards that you get. Those cards can be anything from every critical hit deals an extra 60% damage, or a critical hit causes a frost explosion on the ground, slowing down enemies and dealing 300 damage. And also that card, because it's divine, gives you health regeneration too. And so there's so many different aspects of how you build your character. The other thing that's affected in combat is the overdrive. And the overdrive is decided by what outfit you have on. As in, do you gain overdrive through just dealing damage, receiving damage? Does it gain over time? Does it gain mostly from critical hits? Like, how you go along in the game and how you want to play that overdrive is directly tied to what outfit you have on. And so, kudos on the combat. It's one of the fun parts about the game. And speaking of fun, let's get into fun factor. Victor Vran is an enjoyable experience that sometimes gets a bit tiring in the larger areas of the map, to the point that you will pull up the map and try to just rush to the next story point. But most of the time, the game is very fun and enjoyable. The combat is excellent, and the sounds and music are fitting for the setting. When I tell you the jump mechanic is a game changer, I am serious. Also, the game is at 60 frames per second and has the voice of Geralt of Rivia. I don't need to say much more about how fun this is. So, let's get into my final thoughts. Final thoughts. I would love a deeper lore or some kind of side quest other than dungeons. Pacing can be an issue that leads to boredom in larger maps. The combat is amazing. Traversal is helped greatly by the jump button. Victor Vran is running at 60 frames per second. It has the voice of Geralt as the voice of Victor. And if you haven't played this yet, I would buy it right now. If you buy the Overkill Edition, then you spend $2 more, but you're getting both expansions that came out in addition to the standard game. So guys, that's the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you are going to get this game, or let me know if you've already played it. And, as always guys, stay thrifty.